Kristin Higgins with the Public Policy Center at the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture in Little Rock. And in today's webinar, Sherri Woodus, Retail Food Section Chief for the Arkansas Department of Health, will be discussing Arkansas's Cottage Food Law. Ms. Woodus was raised and educated in Southeast Arkansas, receiving her Bachelor's of Science in Biology from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. She has over 30 years of experience in the food regulatory industry. She's worked on the federal level with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration. She has over 19 years of service working in the environmental health branch at the Arkansas Department of Health. And under Ms. Woodus' guidance, food safety education takes precedence before regulation when working in the food industry. Her program works with a whole lot of different people, including summer feeding and after-school providers, fairs, festivals, and event coordinators, farmers market managers, retail food owners and operators, even mobile food trucks and push cart operators, hotels and hospital food service, and other state agencies like the Department of Education, the Alcoholic Beverage Control Division, and the Department of Human Services. Ms. Woodus is a registered sanitarian and certified Serve Safe food manager, among her many accomplishments. Thank you for being here with us today. And I look forward to our conversation about selling cottage food in Arkansas.
Well, thank you, Kristin, and the U of A Division of Agriculture for the opportunity to have this webinar conversation today about selling cottage foods in Arkansas. So let's talk about from your home to the market, just what the law allows. Cottage Food Law Act 399 of 2017 defines cottage foods as those items, food items that are made in a person's home that are non-hazardous foods. Now, these foods are like your baked goods, your candy, your fruits, butters, your jams, jellies, as well as chocolate-covered fruits and berries that are not cut or punctured. Cottage food products only under Act 399 can be sold under the Act 399. And when you're setting up your booth, the Act requires that you have your booth set up is with 100 cubic feet of display space. So going forward, I'm going to talk about what kinds of products are allowed and not allowed under the Cottage Food Act and where those items can be sold, as well as a few other concerns under this Cottage Food Law Act. So what is it that you're interested in cooking or making under the Cottage Food Act? Let's find out if it's allowed by law. Now, I mentioned right from the start that jams, jellies, and fruit butters were allowed. However, I need to add that any jams, jellies, and fruit butters made with artificial sweeteners and similar type sugar substitutes are considered potentially hazardous and may not be sold under the Cottage Food Law. The same can be said for those non-fruit jams, jellies, and butters like roasted garlic, caramelized onion jam, or garlic thyme jam, or even salsa jam. And this is also the case for those drunken spreads like cherry brandy jam, or mimosa jelly, or pina colada jelly. They are not a part of this Cottage Food Act. First, let me talk about where cottage food products can be sold. Now, they can be sold directly from your home to the consumer. They can be sold at a local farmer's market. They can also be sold at a special event, like your church having an annual quilting and craft bazaar, and you have a booth and you're selling your cottage food. or the first Friday on Main Street in your community. Cottage food products can also be sold at a farmer's market or as part of a product featured at an online farmer's market. However, internet sales of cottage food products that are not associated with an online farmer's market are not allowed. So I cannot sell them as part of my Facebook postings or page. It has to be associated with an online farmer's market. When you produce your products, they're required to have a label, and each product should be labeled with the following information: the name and address and telephone number of the person who made it, of course, the product's name, what it is, and a listing of all the ingredients, including those spices like salt and pepper. And then the label must contain, in at least a 10-point font size, quote, "This product is home produced." Okay? Now, there are some limitations to this Cottage Food Act 399. And these limitations mainly center around the type of products that are allowed under this act, and as well as the location under this act. Currently, there has been a bill before our legislators that may enhance where some of these products can be sold. But as it stands today, that bill is before the governor, and if it signed and goes into effect, it will be late summer, early autumn before it is legal. Until that point, cottage food items cannot be served or sold at any ADH or Arkansas Department of Health permitted or inspected retail food establishment. So at this point, you couldn't have at Sherri's Pizza Parlor your cookies being sold or offered for sale at the corner grocery store. So what can be sold under Act 399 of 2017? Well, those whole, uncut, fresh fruits and whole, uncut, fresh vegetables. You can also sell fresh farm eggs and frozen USDA inspected meats. But these meats should remain frozen the entire time. Maple syrup, sorghum, and honey from those wonderful Arkansas beekeepers. You can also sell one of my favorites, uncut chocolate-covered fruits and berries. Now remember, the key point here is if you insert a stick into the fruit or berries, then it's considered cutting and therefore no longer permitted under the Cottage Food Act 399. You may also sell commercially processed non-TCS or time and temperature control for safety foods and baked goods and candies. These products can be sold at the farmer's market, at your local farmer's market, at an online farmer's market, directly to the consumer, at a fair, festival, or as part of an event. Remember, when you're selling these products, you must also include the labeling with the name and contact information of the person who made it. You must also include a statement and a list of the ingredients and a statement that says this product is home produced. Okay, now I've talked about some products that can be sold, and frankly, if those products that I listed are the ones that qualify to be sold under the Cottage Food Act 399 of 2017. However, if your product that you were thinking of was not mentioned, it more than likely does not qualify under this act. But I'm going to discuss a few items that cannot be sold under the Cottage Food Act at the local farmers market. These are items that we frequently have questions about, or we frequently have people to call our agency or the U of A with concerns as if it's possible to sell this as a cottage food. So what cannot be sold as a cottage food? Any food item that requires time and temperature control in order for it to remain safe. So if you have to keep it hot or have to keep it cold, then that item cannot be sold. You cannot sell any canned fruits or vegetables or home canned products. Nothing that is dairy based, like your cheesecakes or your cream cheese based products. And this includes frostings and fillings of those baked goods. No cured meats. You cannot do custards or dried fruits, vegetables, herbs, or spices. No dried meats can be sold. No salsas, no juices, or any pie that contains a meringue or any milled grain, flour, meals, that sort of thing. They don't qualify under the Cottage Food Act. No pickled vegetables or fermented foods like kefir or kofir, however you pronounce it. No sliced fruits or vegetables or smoked meats. Unfortunately, no sprouts, beans, or sprouted seeds can be sold under the Cottage Food Law. Again, we're talking about the foods that cannot be sold under the Cottage Food Act at the farmers market. There are a few other items that also cannot be sold under the Cottage Food Act, and they're prohibited. And those are your homemade cheeses, your raw milk, and your wild harvested mushrooms. If you have any questions about products and if it is allowed under the Cottage Food Act or will require a retail or wholesale and manufacturer permit or even a variance from the health department, feel free to call your Arkansas local county health department and ask to speak with an environmental health specialist and tell them that you have a question about selling cottage food in Arkansas. And he or she would be delighted to answer those questions for you or direct you to someone who can further assist you.